Welcome to another episode of the SEC Boys Podcast. I'm your host, Levi Thurman, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about Week 8 of SEC football. In this episode, we're going to outline how Arkansas needs to move on from their head coach, Sam Pittman, how Missouri dominated South Carolina, and how they've been a shocking team so far this season, and also how they're going to fare in the next few games that they have left on their schedule. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about how Tennessee choked their game away in the second half and why they did this, even though they looked so good in the first half. And with that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's jump right in. Arkansas has had a rough go of it as a fan base for a long time. This year has not been an exception to that. So far, they've gone 0-5 in their conference and are 2-6 total in their games so far this season. Outside of one game that they lost by 12 points, all of their losses have surprisingly only been by a touchdown or less. But this week should have been what changed that. They should have been able to snap that because they were playing an inferior team in my opinion. However, they lost to their opponent Mississippi State, who had also not been doing too well this season and had also not won a single SEC game until this week. Arkansas was at home and they were favored by 6.5 points. However, they ended up losing 7-3. This game can be characterized as being an ugly, low-scoring game, and that kind of just sums up Arkansas's season so far. They haven't been able to score. They haven't. Their defense has been able to play pretty good, but when your defense plays good but your offense doesn't, it leads to most likely losing. And if you can't score on Mississippi State, who knows if they'll be able to score on anyone else the rest of the season. To me, this week was the nail in the coffin for their head coach, Sam Pittman, and I think that it's time for Arkansas to move on. Arkansas's main struggle has been their offensive production. Right now, they rank 13th out of 14th in the SEC in total offense per SEC football statistics. This comes as a shock because they were actually predicted to have the best quarterback in the SEC this year by many people. 2 for 7 Sports actually had their quarterback KJ Jefferson listed as the number one SEC quarterback coming into this season. Their defense has been good, but if you can't even win with a good defense like this and a supposedly good quarterback like this against a bad team like Mississippi State and BYU, to me that shows that Sam Pittman is not going to be able to win at a high level in the SEC. Arkansas has 4 more games left on their schedule this season. They play Florida and Gainesville and then host Auburn, FIU, and Missouri in their following games. As of right now, to me it seems that they will only win one of these games. However, if Sam Pittman wants to keep his job, he needs to win 3 of the next 4 of his games. And even then, to me, it might be the end of the Pittman era at Arkansas. One of the most surprising teams this season, if not the most surprising team this season, has been the Missouri Tigers. They've been able to find success this year and are even still in contention for the SEC championship. As of right now, they sit on the season at 6-1 with their only loss coming to the LSU Tigers. This week, Missouri was able to continue this success by dominating a lackluster South Carolina team 34-12. Via the stats recorded by CBS Sports, Missouri quarterback Brady Cook went 14 of 24 and threw for over 198 yards and 1 touchdown. The team also rushed for 220 yards on the day. Missouri has been able to put up great offensive numbers, and at the moment they sit at number 3 in the SEC in total offense, behind LSU and Georgia. Their quarterback, Brady Cook, has been a big part of this offensive success so far this season. Their quarterback has been able to get to number 2 in the SEC in total yards, and this has been a big part of why their offense has been so successful, adding on the fact that they have key offensive players such as Luther Burden to help out in getting the ball down the field. Even though Missouri has the second best offense in the SEC, and they've been able to overcome expectations this season, their toughest stretch is going to be coming up, and it's going to show really how good Missouri is. This last stretch of game is either going to humble Missouri or it's going to show that they really should be viewed as contenders going into the end of this season. I think that Missouri will split their last four games. I think they're going to lose to Tennessee and Georgia, but defeat Arkansas and Florida. This is probably not what Missouri fans want. They probably want to go 4-0 in these games and be in the SEC championship. But that's not very likely as Georgia specifically is it's at Georgia, and so they'll probably lose that game. And the Tennessee game, it's going to be a close one that I think Tennessee personally pulls out. But I think best case scenario for them is to win 3 out of 4 games. But if I am correct, this means that they'll have gone 9-3 on the season, and this will be the best season so far in the Eli Drinkowitz era, and it's going to show that Missouri is on a very good trajectory under their head coach, and they're in a great spot as a program. Speaking of good trajectories, Tennessee was on pace to dominate Alabama from their performance in the first half. However, football is a four-quarter sport, and this week's third Saturday in October matchup was a great example of why you cannot let up against teams in the second half, especially if it's teams like Alabama. Alabama ended up winning the game 34-20, and many Tennessee fans would tell you that this was due to the fact that the refs called a very one-sided game, and this led to Tennessee's demise in the second half. Josh Pate of the Late Kick podcast does a good job of addressing Tennessee fans' grievances with this, and here's a clip of what he had to say about the game.
It's one thing to say, wow, the officiating was bad in this game. Well, of course it was. I saw the same thing you did. And I've had a problem, a long standing problem, with the way college games are officiated, period. Because there's no accountability. At least not that you or I are ever privy to. I mean, certainly you can get private correspondence from the league office Monday, 48 hours later, they can tell you, we missed this call. We missed that call. Yeah, what they don't tell you is, here's a W instead of the L we gave you. So what does it really matter what you hear? Josh Heupel doesn't care what he hears from the league office Monday. So if you got a problem with the officiating, join the club.
Josh Pate made an excellent point in this video that while the refs may have called a horrible game, the game's over and there's nothing you can do about that. Even if you complain to the refs and the SEC about what happened during this game, it's not going to change the outcome of the game. You're still going to have the L at the end of the day, Tennessee fans. And while this sucks, and as a Tennessee fan myself, it sucks, and watching the game, it was really frustrating, and I didn't like many of the calls that the refs made, and it seemed one-sided. Many teams get screwed like this week in and week out, and there's not much you can do about it. It's not going to change the outcome of the game. And while you think it might, it really won't. And so we just need to move on and focus on what Tennessee as a team needs to do to improve on the season and fix what they did wrong. Because while the refs may have played a role in them losing this game, there are still many other factors that went into this loss. One, for example, in my opinion, is the coaching decisions that Josh Heupel made throughout this game. His decision to go for it on fourth down in pivotal instances that punting the ball would have probably helped is one thing that's very frustrating about what they did this game. To add to the frustration of these fourth down calls, it's even more annoying that when he does decide to go for it and it's a short gain, he lines up his quarterback in the shotgun formation, adding on to the amount of yards that they need to get when they have Joe Milton, who is a big quarterback, who they could line up under center and just have him push forward to get the first down. This is something that Josh Heupel has done throughout his time at Tennessee, and he refuses to let quarterbacks line up under center and always makes them line up under shotgun. It's something that doesn't make sense and I think needs to change if they want to ever go for it on fourth down on short gains and actually get the fourth down. Injuries played a pretty big part in Tennessee losing this game as well. Kamal Hadden, their best cornerback, got hurt with a shoulder injury in the second quarter. This injury was devastating to Tennessee because without him, their coverage was way worse. The whole first half of the game, they had been able to keep Jalen Milroe from throwing the ball all over them, but as soon as Kamal gets hurt, Jalen Milroe has a really good day and is able to throw all over Tennessee, scoring 27 unanswered points in the second half. Gerald Mincey, an offensive lineman for Tennessee, also got hurt during the game, and he's been out for Tennessee a lot throughout the season. Without him, Tennessee is notably worse on the offensive line and can barely run the ball with Dane Davis, his replacement, in. These are two key injuries that really hurt Tennessee going into the second half. But even with these injuries, Tennessee still should have been able to overcome Alabama's comeback if they had just been able to score in the red zone whenever they actually had the lead on Alabama. This, in my opinion, is Tennessee's biggest reason for losing the game. While they did have the lead at the beginning of the game, and they had the opportunity to put the lead up by quite a bit, they had to kick field goals when they should have been trying to get touchdowns. If Tennessee had capitalized in the red zone and scored more points in the first half, it would have made it much more difficult for Alabama to make a comeback in the second half. This difficulty to score in the red zone has been a problem plaguing Tennessee throughout the season, and it's something that they're going to need to fix if they want to win more games going into the end of this season. Coming up, Tennessee is going to have to play Kentucky this week in a night game on the road. If they can win that, they'll have to play UConn, Missouri, Georgia, and Vanderbilt. In these 5 games, I think that they will be able to win all but one, losing to Georgia, but even then, the Missouri and Kentucky games are going to be difficult, and if Tennessee cannot fix many problems that have been plaguing them throughout this season, they could even lose all 3. And with that being said, I'd like to wrap up by thanking everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of the SEC Boys podcast. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share this podcast to your friends, and tune in to next week's episode when we react to week 9 of SEC football. See ya.